For those of you that don't know me, because there's a mix of people on this conversation today, my name's Simon Chaplin. I run an accountancy firm called Greenstones in Peterborough, and I also run a network of accountants called the Accountants Mastermind, which originally started this conversation. So we use MS Teams or Microsoft applications within the Greenstones, within the accountancy practice to a degree, and also within the community. There was a number of conversations around how best to get MS Teams and Planner and Flow and all the other different things that that go along with it to the best use within the practice. So I went out to my network and met the lovely Joe Burns, who is sitting on my left as I look at the screen. And Joe has very kindly offered to give us a background to MS Teams and how it works and some of the really interesting things that it can do. So I have questions and answers. Please feel free to ask any questions as we go through. I'll field the questions for Joe. I've got a screen over here with a Facebook group on, so if I'm looking over here, it's because of that. It's not because I'm ignoring Joe. There's some Q&As at the bottom. So I'll control the questions, and I'll ask the questions when Joe gets to a natural pause. The other thing is there's lots of technology going on today, so screen shares and all sorts of things. So if it's not quite as slick as what it normally is, then please cross your fingers for us. So without further ado, can I introduce you to the wonderful Joe Burns?
Thanks, Simon. And just to give a brief insights to myself and my background with Microsoft Teams. So I run an IT business called Reformed IT. Previously ran another IT company called Pyronet, which I started in 2005 and built up and eventually sold that business. So I've been in the technology sector for quite a while now. And with regards to Microsoft Teams, I was using that in my previous business. I've been using Microsoft Teams within one of my companies for around 5 years now. So mainly back when it was used for instant messaging, and that was about all you could do with it. But it's exploded massively over the last couple of years, and there's so much you can do with Microsoft Teams now. Today we're going to be I'm going to go through a quick presentation, PowerPoint presentation, but I'm going to breeze through that pretty quickly. And it's just to give you some introductory information and insight into Teams, and then we're going to dive straight into the application, and we're going to show you around a little bit and give you some examples of how it can be used within your own companies and your own practices. So yeah, I'm going to jump onto the slide show. So just to clarify, you've got the presentation up?
Yeah, I can see the presentation, definitely.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so quick introduction to what we're going to be going through today and covering. So we're going to look at what is Microsoft Teams, what is it used for, how you access Teams, the ability to reduce email clutter by utilizing chat and group discussion, understanding teams and channels along with permissions, because that's where there's a lot of confusion quite often, is what's the difference between a team and a channel? When do I use one versus the other? So I'm going to cover that a little bit. Cloud file storage and collaboration using Teams and SharePoint. So anybody that's still using things like Dropbox and they've got Microsoft Office 365 as a package, my suggestion is drop Dropbox and move your data and start using the same functionality but in a secure platform that's collaborative within Teams and SharePoint. So, and then we're going to cover some apps and integrations. We're going to look at using the tabs in Teams to manage things like files and forms and Planner, which I know is of interest to a few people. And what else can Teams do? So that's kind of what we're going to be covering today, but it is going to be quite interactive. And if the Q&A wants us to look at other things, we can do. So Microsoft Teams has grown significantly over the last couple of years. For anyone that uses or knows of Slack, which is a similar type of application, Slack was world-renowned as an instant messaging and communication platform. Microsoft Teams last year overtook Slack in the number of users. Microsoft have embedded Teams into their infrastructure and made it so that it works with all the other applications that you get through Office 365 as well, which is why it makes it so powerful. But what can it do? So Teams can do quite a few things now. So it's an internal messaging system, like I said, like Slack or WhatsApp. Some businesses are using WhatsApp to communicate with clients or each other, and so Teams allows you to do those kind of things. I'd say it's almost like a modern intranet. So back in the day, companies would have like a web page and an intranet where they could have discussion points. They might share some files on there. Teams can bring all that together collaboratively and allow people to share ideas, communicate effectively, add their input to things where it's needed. But it's also a place to safely store shared files and to easily find them when you need to. One of the analogies that I always say is that the world of technology has changed massively, and the way that we do things has changed massively. For example, and files, the way that people use files has stayed pretty stagnant. So people use files and folders on computers like they would use an encyclopedia back in the 80s. So you'd go to the library, you'd get an encyclopedia out, you'd turn to the index page, you'd go, right, I'm looking for this particular file or this piece of information, and you turn to the relevant page. And people structure their file system in that logical format. So they have folders, and the difficulty is when somebody new starts within the organization, they struggle to understand the structure that's been built or how to find files, and it takes lots of layers of learning to find those files. And when I say to people nowadays, how do you find a piece of information? Or if you want to find something else, how would you do it? People just say they Google it. They go on the internet, they put in a term, and the result comes up. And yet people don't use files in the same way. Teams gives you the capability to do that, to find files quickly and easily without trawling through folder after folder. So we'll cover that a little bit later on.
Just while I've got a break there, I've got a question from Andrew Joe.
Yeah.
It says basically, interesting about Dropbox. How would sharing work? As doesn't Office 365 have a 5 times or guest user access restriction?
Sorry, say that again.
How do you share the work? As doesn't Office 365 have a 5 times guest user access restriction? So can you add, how many guests can you add to Office 365? Is there a restriction?
No, you can share files very much. So people that are familiar with Dropbox will be familiar with creating a sharing link for a file, where you can, and same with Google Files, Google Drive and things. You can go on to a file or a folder and share that folder, and it creates a sharing link. And then you can send that to somebody, and somebody can put it into their own Dropbox account. You can do exactly the same thing with the Office 365 suite of products. And when we're talking about Teams, Teams is the platform that you're going to access all this stuff, but there are things behind it. For example, it is SharePoint that's creating the files, SharePoint and OneDrive that the files are stored in, but Teams just brings it to the surface for you. Oh. But with regards to SharePoint and sharing files, you can create a sharing link and send it to somebody else in much the same way you can with Dropbox or Google Drive.
There's no restriction on that at all then, basically?
No, okay. And one of the things I would say beyond that is that it goes much better in terms of securing the files and applications as well, because with Office 365, you can share them with certain parties, a bit like WeTransfer. You can create an expiry link on it, so it only works for so long. You can make sure that it only goes to it can only be opened by the specific recipient via email by them linking it to a Microsoft account as well. So you've got more layers of protection that you can apply onto shared files as well.
Brilliant, thank you.
We'll cover that a little bit later. It's not exactly in the Teams thing, but we'll cover that and show sharing files.
Excellent, thank you. So if that doesn't answer your question, Andrew, can you just follow up with a subsequent question? I've got one from Kim. If using SharePoint and OneDrive already, would you share files with clients using SharePoint or Teams?
SharePoint still controls the files. All that Teams is doing is giving you a front end to SharePoint. So I would still use SharePoint to share files at the moment. You have more controls using SharePoint right now than you do within Teams. So I would still use SharePoint for that. Now, ultimately, Microsoft are developing Teams to make it easier, so you don't have so many touch points, and you don't have to keep going to different places. And that's where Teams already has an advantage. So I think over time, it will become easier and better to do that with Teams. But right now, I would still stick to sharing via SharePoint. But again, I'll come to the structure of how you want to Teams out to make it work best with SharePoint, so that you're not putting layers upon layers of complication into it as well.
Brilliant, excellent, thank you. From Jerry, I've got, we're currently using Virtual Cabinet for storage, which is a cloud-based document management system. It's slow and hard to find things. Would you suggest Teams could replace something like that?
Possibly. It's difficult to say in terms of the document management system if it's linking to specific clients and accounts and it works in a specific way with other systems. But in terms of a cloud storage platform that you can keep secure, you can keep the data secure, and you can find things easily, yeah, Teams and SharePoint is great for that. So one of the things I'd suggest, this is how I suggest people adopt Teams and SharePoint in every organization, is you do it bit by bit. You adopt Teams, you start to use the instant messaging and the collaboration features where you can see it. You keep everything else kind of separate for the time being as it was, and then you start to, department by department, introduce some of those features and move some things across and start to use it. And then the more that people become used to it, more comfortable with it, the more likely you're going to transition the business and move everything across. Some people do it wholesale and they move everything in one go and then they hate it. And then they have a distaste about it and they do an absolute U-turn and go back to the way that they were. It's better to start treading slowly and migrating bit by bit. That's what I'd suggest anyway.
Brilliant, excellent. So possibly, but not the first thing that you would do, is a simple answer to that question. Chris Guns commented that he always describes Teams as being the scaffolding that wraps around the building that gives you access to all of the contents.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
Teams is
like
the central hub.
Teams is bringing everything together, and what Microsoft is really trying to do with Teams is make it the place that you can go to do business. So you can get access to all the things that you need in one place. And then the beauty of it is that, it's multi-platform. So it's which we're going to cover anyway, but it's on your mobile, it's on the desktop app, it's on a web version. So you can kind of get into this platform of information from any of these devices. So, yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, so the questions are flooding in.
Yeah.
So what I'll do is I'll start reading through some of the questions. I'll allow you to continue with some of the content that you want to share.
Yeah, that's fine. So what we'll do at the end of this slideshow bit, we'll go through some of those questions if they haven't been answered during this bit. So yeah, that's fine. So yeah, central console to find your colleagues, your business files and applications. It's a way to securely open up a portion of your business to external parties, such as clients, and we're going to demonstrate an example of that. And one of the things I will say about Teams and SharePoint and how you do this is there's a million different ways you can do it. So I'm just going to give you a flavor of things today as to examples as to how you can do it. What you do with that is completely up to you. Every business is going to be using Teams and SharePoint slightly different. But the idea is to try and find things that are going to be common examples in business. That's what I'm going to try and cover today. It's also an online meeting and communication system. So I put a little bit like Zoom, but without the webinars. So we're doing a webinar now on Zoom, and it's great. It's great for webinars. So you might start to replace Zoom with things like internal and external meetings. You can use Teams to do the same thing. So video calls, team meetings, those kind of things where you're doing them over multiple locations and you want to do it over video and voice, you can do that with Teams, and then it can still do all the recording. It can also caption it for you. It can either do live captions as well on certain things, and you can also record and then go through the transcriptions automatically. Now, where that's really powerful is if you've got a video meeting, and somebody couldn't make that meeting, but they want to find out when a particular client was mentioned or when their name was mentioned, instead of actually watching the whole 1 hour meeting, what they can do is they can find it within Teams, and then they can choose to search, for Joe Burns, was I mentioned, or Joe, was I mentioned? And then it takes you straight to that piece of the meeting by text, and then you hit play, and then you can listen to what happened at that point in the meeting. So you can see how you was discussed at that particular point in the meeting. Or if there's a particular client that you're keen to keep on top of what's going on, discussion point on a client, you can type their name in and jump straight to that part of the meeting rather than listening to everyone talking about what they did at the weekend and things like that. So it helps from efficiencies for meetings from that perspective. So how do I get Teams? So I'm hoping that a lot of the people on the call are already using Office 365. If you're not, if you're on Google, then kind of this might not be the best thing for you to be looking at. There are other options on Google separately to this, but if you are already using Office 365 or you're considering Office 365, then Teams is great. It fits within the Microsoft stack really well, and it's included in most of the packages. So if you've got Office 365 Business Essentials or Business Premium or Microsoft 365 Business, which is a package I definitely recommend looking at, or any of the enterprise plans, you will already have access to Teams. And even if you haven't got any of those, there is also a Slack version of Teams, which is like the chat message and collaboration suite. Doesn't have all the full singing, all singing and all dancing package, but there is a free version that you can get as well of Teams. And then how do you use it? Well, you use it across the desktop app, the web app. So if you are on another computer somewhere, you can join via a web address, teams.microsoft.com, or you can use the mobile app. And the idea is to do that from anywhere so that you can get into all of the things that you need from any location. Now, one of the things I'll stress about this, because anyone that knows me from LinkedIn will know I'm a bit of a security buff anyway, is that generally, this isn't just exclusive to Teams, but the explosion of working from anywhere raises its own security concerns. So one of the things I'd strongly recommend for anybody is to make sure that if you're using Office 365, you enable things like two-factor authentication, and also talk to your IT company or your IT department about conditional access as well. So those things will help to mitigate the risk of somebody breaking in and getting access to all of your important data. So just something additional to consider. Okay, that's it. That was the slides done. Let's dive straight into the actual using Teams and what you can do with it. But Simon, is there any other questions that I could answer now potentially?
Yeah, let's fire down some. So from Roy, Microsoft account, does this mean that clients need Microsoft license for the Teams 365? So this is a subsequent question.
Yeah. No, they don't. Okay, so I've got a bit of a demonstration on my platform where I've sent an email. I've set my external account up on my Google account, and you do need an account. You need a username and password creating, but they don't need a license. It doesn't need to be it does need to be a Microsoft account, but that gets set up instantly during the process. So it's a bit like Zoom. If you're having a Zoom meeting with somebody else needs to have a Zoom account. It can be free, but they just need to sign up and have a username and password to sign in. It's the same concept. You'll send a link to somebody. It could be a Google account or anything, a Gmail account, and they just click through. They'll have to make sure they've got a username and password to sign in, but they don't need to have a license or anything to be able to gain access to the Teams interface.
That's basically what you did with me last night, that we're going to show people if it works today.
Exactly, and I've got a Gmail version as well, which is an external account that I've got that's got nothing to do with Microsoft as well, so I can demonstrate it on my side as well.
Brilliant. And then is there a specific version of Microsoft 365, a specific license that you need to be able to do these things that we're talking about today?
That was, let's go, that was those there. So Office 365 Business Essentials, Business Premium, Microsoft 365 Business, or Office 365 E1, E3, or E5. So pretty much every Office 365 package that a business is going to be using includes it.
Has got it in. Brilliant. Yeah. Excellent. So that's that one done. So I guess the guest member restriction is to the team itself rather than to the individual files / folders. But
there's two different ways of doing it though. So we're going to cover during our session, we're going to cover external access into a team, and then everything that you can do with that. But then briefly, as I say, it's kind of outside of Teams, but I'll show SharePoint file sharing as well, which is different and is handled in a different way. But we'll kind of go through two of those scenarios so that it can see.
Brilliant. So Andrew, you'll see that. Is there a mobile app for file sharing and instant messaging?
Yes. So Microsoft Teams has a mobile app that does all the instant messaging. You can click into the files and look at the files through it as well. So it doesn't have all of the functionality that you can do from the tabs in Teams, but the basics like instant messaging, group chat, files, it has that functionality built in, and video calling, so you can do the video conferencing and meetings and stuff through it as well.
Brilliant. And is that the app that you was talking to me about this morning that I've not downloaded yet?
No, that is so there is a Microsoft Teams app on iOS and Android. But the other thing that I would mention, again, it's kind of outside of Teams, but I'd strongly recommend it. It's only come out in the last few days. There is a new Microsoft Office mobile app. Download that, connect it to your Office 365, brings everything together really nicely from a Word, Excel, PowerPoint, images, PDFs. You can sign PDFs on it. You can find everything nice and easily in one place. Any files you've got in your Teams folders can be easily found within the mobile app using that Office mobile as well. So I definitely encourage people to look at that as well.
Okay, brilliant. To use Teams for online meetings, I assume the person who's mentioned in the meeting would also need to have access to the MS Team.
No. No, you can invite anybody, just like you do with Zoom, where you send an email link out to people. You can do exactly the same thing in Teams. So you can create a meeting within Teams, and obviously the people in that team can access it. So if you're doing a team meeting and you introduce it into a team, everyone from there will be able to access it. But you can also easily go in and just create a one-to-one or a one-to-many team meeting and send it to external recipients. And similar to Zoom, they click the link and they would just come into the meeting.
Brilliant, thank you. Is there a cost for SharePoint licenses?
Again, wherever you've got those Office 365 packages, SharePoint is included as well.
It's all included in that, so there's no additional cost for that.
No.
How do I get notifications on the app, as we don't seem to get no notifications through the mobile?
It'll be depending on how you've got your notifications set up. I'm going to talk a bit about notifications because like with WhatsApp, for example, I'm sure everybody at some point has been chucked into a WhatsApp group to plan a stag do or a hen do or just your family WhatsApp. And one of the things, and same with Facebook, you get into a Facebook group chat, and the first thing that I do when I get invited to a WhatsApp group where I see that there's been 30 people added is I disable my notifications. I go, pause my notifications, suspend forever, because I don't just want to hear everybody chatting in this group about stuff that's not relevant to me. So Teams works in a similar way, but by default, it means that if you're part of a group discussion, a group channel, then your notifications will typically be disabled. So chat can go on in there, and unless you go and look at the chat, it won't be telling you. You can decide to have it tell you every time somebody says something, but the way that most of these things work are using the @ symbol, so a mention. So in Facebook chats, in WhatsApp chats, if you hit the @ symbol and then put a person's name, that then overrides the disabled notifications and gives that person a nudge. So Teams works in the same way, that if you're trying to get somebody's attention, then you should @ them so that they know that you're talking about them. But you can also, in Teams, you can @ a group as well. So it could be the entire group to give them a nudge that they need to pay attention to what you said. Okay. So yeah, that's how that works.
So that'll be in the specifics somewhere. And then why is it that some web pages work from the desktop app, and this is on Mac OS, but not on the web version of Teams? So stuff like Center, which is an accountancy specific program. It's a accountancy practice manager program. This is the web pages as a tab on the channel. Now that doesn't make sense to me, but I'm hoping
that'd need looking into quite specifically. Okay. I think. Yeah.
All right, brilliant. So if you want to follow up with Joe, Andrew, on that, if you drop me an email, then I'll gladly connect you. And when Joe's got time, then we can sort that one out. If we're sharing files between clients or team members that are sensitive, like accounts and tax returns, can we password protect them or encrypt them to make sure they're secure?
Yeah, well, you can. Well, the way that I would say to do it is to actually create the permission structure in the groups and the teams in the way that you want it, as opposed to, you can password protect files, but usually you do that at the layers of security for the groups. But I'm going to go into that in terms of security anyway, a little bit more.
Excellent. And then the new app from Microsoft. Can you just confirm the name again? I've got it written down as MS Office mobile app.
It's the new Microsoft Office mobile app. Yes. Let me just have a quick look on my phone. Yeah. So it's literally called Microsoft Office mobile. Yeah, and it's got like an O. I don't know if the camera will pick this up, but it's got like an O symbol
At the
on it.
top, yeah,
Yeah,
red with a
like red. But that's the new app.
brilliant. Thank you. And then the last one, which I think you answered during the course of the conversation, is there an app within Teams which you'd recommend best to start with to the transitions to Teams? So start with Teams, and then is there something that you should add into that to help at the start?
I would start with Teams and chat, instant messaging, chat, group chat. Then there's a couple of personal apps which I'll show you, like OneNote and Planner. You can start to do that, but from adopting the business into it, I'd then move on to like files and start moving, but I'd move the files almost department by department or on a use case basis. Let me see if I can get focus again. On a use case basis, I think I'd do that essentially.
So, and then the team correspond via WhatsApp group or via a WhatsApp group, which is end-to-end encryption. Would messaging via Teams be as secure as WhatsApp?
Yeah, everything's fully encrypted in Teams. Yeah.
Brilliant. And then one last one from Chris before, and I'll let you move on then, Joe. Regarding the search function, does Teams automatically transcribe the meeting then?
Yes. Yes.
It might have missed something integral. It seems like a great function. When you was talking about it, it seemed like a really great function to me, and I'm fascinated on how it works.
Yeah, it's really good. I do a lot. I do some business coaching for a few people, and I always record. I use Teams. I always record the meetings, and I have them transcribed, and then both me and the other person can then go and revisit. Oh, I'm sure Joe mentioned something about this, and search through and see exactly where I said about it. So yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, I just Ed, is so all you do is you create the Zoom meeting within Teams, and it's all done automatically, is it?
It's not Zoom. It's a Teams meeting, but yeah, right. and then you just hit record, and it'll do it for you. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, fantastic. I've got my money's worth already, Joe.
Right, I best jump onto it. I know that obviously we've got pressures on time. So
that's right. Yeah, we got about 15 minutes. So
we'll have to fly through this. So let's move that out of the way. Okay, so let's just start at the start. So within Teams, you have these tabs down the left-hand side. Now, by default, you will have activity, Teams, chat, calendar, calls, files. Under there, I've got OneNote, Planner, and Flow, and Zoom, and I've added these on as applications. So this is the good thing about Teams, is you can almost customize it to how you want to use it. And so, for example, to do that, you can click on the ellipses here, and there's an option about find an app. So I added Zoom. So I search for Zoom, and you can search for anything that you kind of might use on a regular basis. And you click into the application you want. It's already installed, but as you can see, I can just open that app. And if you drop down, you can either add that to a team or you can add it to a chat as well. So you can basically have the add-in that's part of a team, or it could be an individual add-in, a bit like these ones here. To give you more of an insight as to what applications are available, you can click on more apps. And then there's just a huge list of different things that people may already use. So Flow, we're going to cover briefly. There's Zoom, GitHub for people that use that. So there's various things, and you can go through and look by category as well. And whenever you find something that you might use, like Trello is quite popular, like Trello boards, you can go in and you can just choose to add it into your organization.
So just for me then, Joe, what's the difference between a chat and a team?
Okay, well, I'll cover that in a moment, because that's one of the fundamentals we'll go through. So on the ones that I've got down the left-hand side, these are called personal apps. So these are ones that are linked to me specifically. So you can see personal apps on the left, and that gives you all the possible options for personal apps. Who is quite a nice one. It's Microsoft's, but it can, if you've got your Office 365 set up well with proper organizational structure, people's department names and things like that, who can be an easy way of finding out who people are within a big organization. So who's the manager of such and such and things like that. So that's quite useful for bigger organizations. One of them, so yeah, I'll go back to the Teams and chat, but just to show you the OneNote app. So I quite like OneNote, but obviously quite often it's hard to find it, or you've got to go to the application. And the good thing about having it in Teams is it's right there, logging down the topics of discussion for today. If I go to my Teams checklist, I've got some of the ideas that we're going to run through, and just make sure that I've gone through these things. So Teams. So all of these teams, so if you can see the top level here where we've got Reformed IT directors, accounts, those kind of things, these are what's classed as a team. And these subheadings underneath, these are classed as channels. So you start with a team and you create a team, and then within a team, you create a channel. This general channel will always be created by default. I'm not a fan of this particularly. I think it would be better if it was completely customizable and we can remove that. But every single team that you create will have a general tab and a general channel, sorry. And then within that, you can create multiple channels. And think of this like your team being the main permission structure. So if it's a department, like we've got directors and accounts. So with directors, the directors of the Reformed IT business are all members of that. But in the Reformed IT, that's everybody within the entire company that's allowed into that particular team. And then we have channels within it, depending on what the subject topics are, or the files that we want to keep in it, and those kind of things. In directors, we've only got the permissions for the specific directors. In accounts, we have, again, the directors, and then we can share it with third-party accounts teams so that they can get access to it and drop our files that we need, like payslips and stuff like that, directly into there without having to send it via email or any other platform. So that kind of gives you an idea of how you would structure it. You can have external people join teams. So let's say this client portal is the example that I've been demonstrating with you, Simon, in that we can go into the client portal and we can manage the team. And then we've got myself as the owner, and we've got the members and guests, and we can add other people. And here you can add external recipients to that as well. So you can just basically type in somebody's external email address that's external to the company. So if I do hot BI UK and add as a guest, I can hit add, and it will send an email to that particular person, giving them and granting them access to this team. And you see that I've got a load of guest members, including Simon, and I've just been testing it with myself, my own email addresses. So that's where you create a team, and that's where you decide who has access to the things within that team. Now, by default, if you give somebody access to a team, all of these subheadings, they have default access to all of those. There you can see the emails come through. You've been added as a guest, and then you can open up Microsoft Teams. But anybody that has access to the top level for the team also can get into all of these subheadings. There was, however, a new feature that Microsoft released. It was long overdue, and that came late last year, which allowed you to create a private channel within a team. So if you needed, some people to access all of these things, but then you've got a more sensitive channel where you want to keep conversations and files more secure, what you can do now is you can click on the ellipses, hit add a channel, call this private conversations, and here in privacy you've got a standard, which means it's accessible to everybody within the team, or you can make it private and only specific people can access that particular channel. If we hit next, it creates the channel. In a minute. Okay, and then you can add people into that. So for example, if I add my Google guest account, right? So I've given membership access to my guest account. You can tell that it's a private channel because it has a padlock next to it. So these ones are accessible from everybody in the team. These ones are only accessible to the members that have been allowed access to that channel. Is that making sense to you, Simon?
It is, yeah. I'm just trying to work on the principles of it, because I'd imagine, say for example, where you've got client portal, we had, say, payroll department, and within payroll department we had the 3 team members that are in that payroll department. So everything that we were sharing within the channels would be seen by all 3 of those people. I'm just trying to think of it. Well, I'd imagine that, say for example, we've got Leanne, Anna and Liz. If I just wanted to have a conversation with Anna, I would create a new team just for me and Anna. But what you're suggesting is that because Anna's part of the payroll team, we just do a private channel in the team for Anna.
Well, what I would say is, to answer that correctly, you're going to, if you want to have a conversation with 2 people within the team, and it's just a conversation. What I would suggest is not doing it through a team at all. Don't create a team just for one conversation, because going back to your previous point about what is a chat, at the top here we've got a new chat. Okay, if we hit new chat, okay, I can start typing the name. So if I wanted to chat to you, Simon, I could chat to you, and I could type, and that could be to multiple people as well. So I can add multiple people to a chat. So in fact, let me just, so let's say I do Simon and, oh, sorry, doing this wrong there. So group name. So if we wanted to chat about Teams webinar, right, and I wanted you in it. Why is it not letting me add somebody else? Okay, this is where it kind of goes wrong when you're doing a live demo. You can add multiples.
So just basically from my perspective, whilst that churns away, if I wanted a conversation, a one-off conversation with 2 people, I could create a chat. But if I wanted something more long-standing, so say for example, there's the accounts team, and within the accounts team there's a manager, I could have an accounts team, and then I could have a private conversation with the accounts manager that included things like budgets and appraisal processes. So it's all kept in the same place. It's just that certain people within the team get to see that channel only.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. So, and again, the reason that this has been such a long overdue feature request is that you see when we built ours, this wasn't even available. So, for example, we've got the Reformed IT team. Directors is just a subset of that. So, really, we wanted it so that we could have Reformed IT as a team, so everybody's in that, and then we wanted maybe directors as a channel within that team, so it keeps it all in the same place without having to have separate teams all the way down for the sake of it. But private channels gives you that capability to do that. You can have files and chats and other things built in to a private conversation that's then locked down only to the members of that particular channel.
Okay, I see.
Okay, so it's a useful feature. There is one slight problem with it, in the fact that although you can do files and posts and things like that, the options for the other tabs are slightly limited versus what you can do on a full open channel. So for example, forms isn't included on there, and there's other bits that are missing. Whereas if I go to one of the other teams, I get a lot more options in terms of what I can include, like planners and things like that. So it's still not perfect, but if you just want to have a separate channel for storing files that are private to a smaller subset of a team, you can do that within a private channel.
Brilliant, excellent, thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to move on to some of the, so that's the difference between chats and teams. Teams are a place where you store files, you collaborate on things, and a chat is like a one-off, like small, either one-to-one or a small group chat. The other thing to note is the search bar and command bar at the top. You can do various different things with this. If you put / for people that like shortcuts, you can put / and it tells you the different features you can use. So one of the common ones that I use is / chat, and then hit space and then type in Simon and then hit enter, and then apply. So you can quickly and easily get to, well, I can see it, it's covered up, move that out of the way. But you can quickly and easily get to certain things that you want. So I'm going to do Joe Miller. And it sends a message. So you can quickly and easily, he'll probably reply to that now, but you can send messages. If you like shortcuts, you can do it that way without having to click on buttons and open a chat and stuff like that. So yeah, something to consider. This is also a search bar, so you can search for files or previous chats through this as well, but we'll get onto that in a moment. So now just to go through, so this demonstration team has just purely been designed to go through on this webinar and to give you some ideas of how you can use Teams to make things easier, put things together a bit better. So one of the things I thought is that for new starters, if somebody joins the business and you want to give them all of the information about the business, about key information that they should need when they start with the organization, I figured that within your team, you could have a new starters channel. And here you can see that we've done a bit of a so everything.
You're back again there, Joe. You just froze then for briefly.
Yeah, I've dropped for some reason. Right, sorry, to go back a little bit. So, so in the new starters channel, we can have an option for things like company handbook that's in one specific tab, and then obviously just downloaded a sample handbook, but then people can go through and look at that. I've created a useful information wiki, so you can go through, the new starter can go through and see what's nearby, where can I go to eat, what's the public transport like. So information that would be really useful to somebody that's just started within the business. The other thing that we've got is core values as a tab, and again with this one you'll see that it just links to our website and gives the core values of the business. What you can also include into a tab is a form. So if you needed to collect information from employees, which we do, this is actually a real form that we use, you can go through and collect information from that individual. And then all of that gets fed back. So the idea being that if I, as the manager, was to add some information or add another tab here, everybody who's in that team who has access to that channel would immediately see that change. So I can dynamically change the content that they get here to make it relevant to that particular department or person. To give you another example, in the client portal, we've got this client onboarding. So what I was thinking from accountancy practices is that you could add your clients into this client portal and make it almost like a group forum discussion, a way to interact with your clients. So with client onboarding, we could do a client information request. And I've only got 2 questions on this form at the moment, just as an example. But if we went in and you asked them various questions of things that you needed from them to onboard them properly as a client, you could put in Simon and a company number. But again, you can add as many questions as you want into this form and hit submit, and that's done. So now from your perspective in the company, you can go back, and I've got this new clients tab. So as people feed that information in, it starts feeding the information back to an Excel sheet that somebody's got access to internally, and that's like live dynamically updating. So there's things like that you can do quite quickly and easily. If we go back to client onboarding, you could have, again, a wiki, so you could have information that they need that's useful to them as a client about how your process works. And it's as easy as going in and just updating this information. You can go how we work, and then you can just fill all that information in, put in descriptions, and they'll be able to see that, and they'll know what your process is and how you work. You've also got files. So if you've got like template documents, I know obviously from an accounts perspective, there's quite often things you have to do for payroll. So there's template files that you need for that. You could drop all of those files that they need when they come on board into the here, so that instead of all the emails going back and forth every time you take a client on to say, here's this attachment, you need to fill this in, or you need to do this, you need to do this, or here's a guide of how to do a dividends voucher, a template for a dividends voucher. Those kind of files and templates you could just drop straight in here, so that when you take on a client, you go, oh, once you've got into the client portal, go into the file section, and there you've got loads of templates that are useful to you as a business to get you started. So things like that are really quite useful.
Yeah, I've had a couple of wows, Joe, as you've been speaking. Then I find it remarkable how you do it, and you just think it's sort of run of the mill stuff, and then I look at it and think, I can't believe it just did that. It's like fantastic. So, couple of questions, and I've got some more questions, and I'm very conscious of the time. So, if we create a client portal, and we put these documents in, when we add a new client to that portal, can that client see the other clients, or can they just see their own name?
Yeah, so on this, the way that I've created the structure, and I'll show you what the client sees. Right, so this is me as an external recipient of this particular business. And I would be able to go in, so I've not locked that little bit down, but I would be able to go in and I'd be able to see the files. But what I've done, you can change the permissions in SharePoint. So let me drop back a second. So on here, if I click open in SharePoint, which is always something that's quite useful to use, because then it'll take you to the actual structure of the files. But from within here, I've actually got the capability to set permissions on these folders as well. Right. So I would just click on that, for example, manage access, and then I can now decide what access, like the client portal visitors or client portal members have got. So whether that's, they can just view it, whether they can edit it, or I can stop sharing it completely with them as well. So you have got some additional levels of security permissions you can create here. And what I've done as an example for this particular team is that I've done, let's say, for example, this tax news and tips, which is, again, an idea people could use. They use it as a forum. I've made it so that this is moderator only. So if I go into manage channel, channel moderation on, who are moderators, team owners. So only the people that own that team can actually post anything into it. And then if I was to come onto it as a client and look at tax news and tips, I can't actually enter any new information. I can't start a new conversation. But what I could do as a client is, if there's been some, like this IR35 guidance example, so if there's been a post that's been made, you can use GIFs in it as well, just to make it a bit more personable. If there's a post that's been made by the business, but you want your interaction from your clients, they can go on and go, great, can you advise when I need to take action, or whatever. They might ask a very pertinent question, and when they post that in as a guest, from here you can see that there's a notification, and I can then deal with that particular request or reply to them live on here. So that's pretty useful. This example here, by the way, this Joe Burns via email, one of the things that, again, is quite an unknown feature, a little bit hidden, but it's really useful, is the fact that any of these channels have their own email address or can have their own email address. So if I go into here, for example, and click on the ellipses, you've got get email address. Now, this is really useful if you want to, like case management and stuff. You've got an email address. If anything gets emailed to that email address, it will automatically land into that particular team. Then you can also lock that down so that only specific people can send into there as well. So if I copy that, for example, and I just drop an email to that email address, So you send anything you want, and it can be attachments as well. So you can add attachments that come directly in and get linked to the channel. But you can send an email into it, and you'll notice in a minute there'll be another post. There you go. Another post that's just landed into that channel. And from a guest's perspective, they can see that as well. So if you've got external parties like that give marketing tips or hints and information, collaborative that want to share information with a group, they can just drop it into an email and it can appear in that channel really easily. So you can use that.
So just to follow up on that, I've got referring to the client portal area, can you have individual client access to their own area? As I still don't quite see how they don't see each other's onboarding forms.
Yeah, well, the onboarding, so the way I've done the onboarding form is that they won't be able to see the data from here because, so I put the information in there like I did before.
Yeah.
In the demonstration team, I've got access to the new client's Excel sheet. The data is sat in here, but all I've done is I've created it with separate permissions.
Right.
So if I go back here, and let's say I go to the client onboarding and look at files, and then open in SharePoint. So documents, client onboarding. So this is as a guest. I've got access to all of those folders, but in this documents folder here, this is where the data goes to. But I've actually, if I go back and do it from my own account, so client onboarding, files. And again, one thing to note is this is quite often an open in SharePoint or open in web. So if you ever want to take it outside of Teams, you can do that. So if I drop back into here, client portal, documents, this is me within the organization. So I've got the client information request form and data there, which I can go into. But nobody else can see that because I've locked it down here. So if I click on that, manage access, I've basically removed it and only given the owners of client portal and demonstration team. So no guest access has got access to that file. So you can do that. You can lock it down. So just to make sure we cover the collaborative stuff as well at the moment, because I think, like you said, that was quite useful for you. So when you've got files in Teams or in SharePoint, there is the capability to work on files at the same time. So, for example, I've just dropped a file into Roadmap. So if you can get access to that as well, Simon, I've called it Socks Up Simon, XLS.
So I just need to do that. Go there. Client portal. Where would I find that? Is that in?
So in Teams, in Roadmap and files.
Roadmap. Got you. In files, Socks Up Simon. Yep. Yeah.
If you go into there. So one of the things that's really good about SharePoint and Teams, again, is just acting as an interface to that, is the fact that multiple people can be in the same file at the same time and collaboratively work on it. So we're just messing about in here. So hi, Simon. So if I go into there, kind of can't really see your screen in there at the moment, but I can see that you're in the file because it says Socks Up Simon has this workbook open, and there's the response. So I can now collaboratively, without it saying that this, and I can even see that you're typing.
Just not spelling it right.
Yeah, and I can see whereabouts your cursor is. So collaboratively, we can work on this file at the same time.
Yeah. So just so everybody watching, I've got that spreadsheet open on my PC, and as I'm typing here, obviously it's appearing on Joe's screen, so we can both work on exactly the same spreadsheet at exactly the same time, which I think is really good.
Yeah, and the other thing with that, with anything that's on SharePoint, is just trying to think where it is on here. I can't find on there, but there are previous versions and stuff as well. So everything that is being done, you can go back and see the previous versions as well. So you can roll that back. So that's quite useful. And yeah, there's loads. I'd say we could literally be talking about. So just quickly to cover Planner, because we said about using Microsoft Planner within Teams as well. So Microsoft Planner is a function that it's a bit like a Kanban board. So you can drop different items, tasks, and interact on different tasks on here. So just to give you an idea, this is the capability. I've got these things called buckets. So service improvements, new features, resources. We could have another one in there called, let's go have new features, service improvements, applications, something like that. So you can create buckets and then you can categorize into these buckets, but you can also group by progress. So you see this a lot. You see businesses working on what's going through, what's being completed, what's in work at the moment. You can add tasks and move them around. So when it's been completed, just like Post-it notes, you can click into these and you can then categorize as well what they are. So you could have different labels for different things: bookkeeping, year-end, VAT, onboarding, offboarding. And from that, you can also then go and choose labels and see what tasks are related to what labels. So onboarding, allow client onboarding through electronic form instead of filling in a PDF. And within this, everybody within your Office 365 account, or everybody that's got access to this this team, will be able to make comments on here. So and then anybody that's watching that can be notified and can see what's going on. So it's quite a nice feature within Planner to just use to keep on top of things like tasks, lists, and like I say, you could have it as a features board as well.
Brilliant. I'm very conscious of the time, Joe. I've got 10, 11, I've got 12 questions on.
Okay.
I know you've got a massive amount that we've talked about you sharing that we've not even touched on today. So what I'm going to do, if I may, I know you want to share at the end the ways that you work, and funny enough, I've got a question about that as well. So I'll just what I think are the really quick questions, so a yes, no answer type scenario. I'll just run through those. The other questions, if I can share those with you after the webinar finishes, and we can perhaps have a conversation about coming back and doing some of the other stuff and answering some of the questions that we don't get we don't get a chance to. So just quickly firing through. Is Wiki any good? I've heard it's not very searchable. So
yeah, exactly right. I think Wiki is only going to be used for basic stuff because it doesn't have a search. Instead of Wiki, what you can do, let's say you click on the tab there. Instead of Wiki, you can use OneNote, and then you can do a similar thing, start structuring your document however you want. So create a new notebook. You can call it Wiki if you wanted to. And then that's going to create a OneNote for that particular channel. And I'll call it Wiki. It's actually a OneNote. You can then search through that and you can do bullet points and everything that you want. So yeah, I'd probably say for stuff that's beyond basic, use a OneNote instead of a Wiki.
Brilliant, excellent, thank you. To ensure consistency and an element of control, can access for the setup be restricted so only a few team members can configure the structure?
Yes. So you do that at the team level. So like demonstration team, managed team, and then so your owners would be the ones. So you've got like channels. Hold on, settings. So member permissions. So here you can go allow members to create and update channels, allow members to create private channels. So if you wanted to lock it down so that only the owners of a team can do these things, then you just remove the ticks there.
Brilliant. Excellent.
Always look at these ellipses because that's where everything kind
loads of stuff
is.
in there, isn't it? Yeah, you keep. I never even knew they was called ellipses until today. So,
it's practice. I used to call them the 3 dots.
That's what I'd say, the 3 dots. But anyway, can Teams support standard operating procedures, and can document review reminders be set? So is there a way of setting up systems basically, or recording standard operating procedures within Teams, and then can you remind people to follow them through? I would imagine that's about.
Yeah, it's a bit advanced, but there's no reason you can't. So for that, I would use things like a SharePoint list. So you can go in and you can create a SharePoint list, and within SharePoint list, you can do things with flow, so that you can add reminders and things for people. So it's not impossible. No, it's a little bit more advanced there.
Okay, brilliant. Then for Kim, set up forms. If you're still, yes, you are. Speak to Mark Swindell tonight at the meeting tonight, and Mark will show you how to do that one. Could you use forms to update dividend minutes and vouchers automatically?
Yeah, we that's what we do ourselves. Yeah, so yeah, you can have a form to say, what's the date the dividends issue, how much has been issued, and then it can then create documents as a result of that. In fact, for anybody that's interested and still on, at the end, obviously, I'll go through the rest of your questions, but I'll go through our proposal example, which people will find interesting because it would do similar things to that.
Okay, so there's still, yeah. We've got 40. We got 57 people still on of the 63 that started, Joe. So
we'll go through that at the end and give a real example of how you can use forms and flow to create documents and even email that out, get signatures and stuff like that. I can go through a quick demo on that.
Brilliant. This might be covered later, but we're trying to use forms/flow when we send out proposals through Practice Ignition, which is a piece of software, cloud-based technology that we use to send out proposals.
Yeah.
To collate anti-money laundering and HMN authorization information. Is it possible to automatically set up a new client team if they accept through Practice Ignition?
Possibly, but I'd need to look into that.
You'd need to have a play. Okay. Yeah. So Stuart, if you want to follow up on that, if you send me an email, I'll put you in touch with Joe so he can work through that. How can we create a form for clients to collaborate and share with a few admins to keep an eye on it? We've touched on that.
Yes.
As a team or private channel, client interaction, should it be as a team or as a private channel within a client team?
Yeah, so I would suggest if you're having so we've got, just to give you an idea, we have some clients that we link into a Teams. So like Answer For You, for example, is a client, and we keep our projects and general conversation, we keep that as a team. So yeah, if you're going to do stuff directly with a client, I'd suggest creating a team for them and then including the people that need to be in that team. Yeah. Brilliant.
Thank you. So that's that one done. Can you lock down access to previous versions in SharePoint? So if you've created a file or created a Word document, can you lock it down so nobody can't go in and change it?
Yeah, I have looked at that before, and I think that you can, but I can't remember exactly how you do it. Okay. But I think that's possible because I've looked at that before as a potential issue. So yes, I think you can do it.
Brilliant. Would I be able to have your opinion on Planner versus Trello? Which do you think is better, Planner or Trello?
I'd say Planner because it's integrated to everything. So with Planner, and it's getting better. So Planner and To Do, which is another Microsoft app that hardly people use. This is To Do. I think they're going to rename that Tasks. But now To Do and Planner are going to fit together. And same with the Outlook. You can flag something in Outlook, it'll stick it in your To Do list. From To Do, you can link to Planner. Your Planner will show you all your To Do. So if you're using the Microsoft stack, all of the things fit together nicely. So that's why I would say if you're going to use it, use Planner.
Yeah, we use Planner and Trello, and to tell you the truth, now I'm using them. I forget which one I'm using, if that makes sense, because I just going backwards and forwards. That's fantastic. Andrew's just done a follow-up from the Practice Ignition to Teams, probably via Zapier. He's put.
Yeah, you can do. There are more integrations that are coming in Flow, but you can flick between the two of them. So yeah, if there's no direct integration, then using Zapier would be probably easier, but there might be the capability to plug the two things together.
Okay. Is there a way of creating a collaborative time planner so we can time plan the client jobs per team member in a diary stroke calendar type format that can be changed and updated by a different team? Well, that would be Planner.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, probably. In Planner there is. So quickly go back to that roadmap bit. In our roadmap, there's the schedule. So when you're putting your tasks out, you can determine when they're going to be and who's involved in them, who's assigned to them. So that might be about the right fit for it. That's a guess. The other thing that we didn't even speak about is the fact that it does have calendar integration with Outlook. So within my calendar, this is where there's the meetings and stuff. I can go in and create a team meeting, so video call, and then invite Simon. I can invite anyone there, any external as well, and then yeah, whatever, and then schedule that in, and then it sends. Well, and again, here you've got the link, a bit like you get a Zoom link, so you can even just copy that link and ping it over a message to somebody if you wanted to. You've got the join, just like you have normally. But that's that, yeah. So we've got a video call booked in, and we can join that meeting, and Simon can join it. You know, it's pretty simple. You've got a meet now as well, so if I want to jump straight into a meeting, I can just hit that and then share the code just like you're doing in Zoom as well. I'd say that Zoom still is better in certain things, but this is going to get better and better over time.
Brilliant, thank you. And then Jiten, can we create forms to send to former accountants as part of professional clearance? Yes, you would be able to do that, as Joe said. Chris, guys, brilliant session. Such a difficult job trying to demonstrate. Yeah, we discovered that there's a massive amount in there.
So
I think we could have just done a basic. What questions have you got on Teams, and just fired them at you? And I think you've done a fantastic job of explaining them, Joe. Off the cuff like that.
Well, one of the things it seems you've got a lot of questions about, because Forms is brilliant. I've been using Forms for a while. Forms is brilliant, and there's Forms Pro now, which is even better. If you wanted to, we could dive into another webinar at some point on Forms and Flow and how those two things fit together. You know, because I'll give the example anyway in this session as to how powerful it can be when you put all these pieces together, so people can get the idea. But to show them how you're actually doing it, we would definitely need another session.
Okay, so can you do that? Because I'm conscious I've got another meeting coming up as well. So
yeah, so what we've done, I've kind of put it in. This fits in our actual team, but I'm careful not to try and share too much data away. Yeah. But so this is a real thing that we use. So we've got this sales opportunities tab. And this is a SharePoint list. So I've hidden away everything and just done it from today only, so you can get the idea. But this is an actual SharePoint list that details all of the quotes that we've sent out. And then we've got this build proposal. So I go into this from like the sales team, and I can put information in here. So if I'm sending a quote to my other business, 5BI Limited, contact full name is contact email, and this needs to be real because it sends. And then what type of so I've done all this in Forms. So what type of proposal are you building? So we do two different types of IT support: extended IT department if they've already got an internal IT department, or it's fully outsourced. How many people require support? Let's say 23. How often would you like visits? Let's say quarterly. Number of sites, 2. What they're using for email, Office 365, obviously. Next. Initial period for the agreement, let's say 12 months. When do you want the agreement to start? Let's say 1st of March. And then it says, please enter a personalized message for the email. It gives us an idea as to what it's going to say. Thanks for your inquiry. Please find quote attached. Okay, hit submit. Right, that's all we do for building an IT support proposal for our clients. You know, those 30 seconds of the steps. And then what it does, it will go away and create a PDF, a Word document, and a PDF. It pings it over. It logs on a SharePoint list that quote is being built and registered. It says that the client hasn't been quoted yet. There's no attachments yet. Hopefully this does work, being live, and I've moved it all across to a different thing, but hopefully fairly quickly. Here we go. No, that's booking. Brilliant. This is where it's broken. 1 second. Oh, I just got a buzz in my pocket, so that's a good sign. Oh, there it is. Right. So now what we get is I get an email like this saying we've built a proposal for 5BI. It says, here's the attachment. And this is what it's built just from those steps that we did. So I created a Word document template with some almost like placeholders. So you've asked for a quote for 23 people within an organization with 2 locations. So it's filled all this out. It's then told us by some formulas that it's got limited remote support for up to 30 users because we round it up to the nearest 10. goes through, gives them the price, tells them what's included, has a quote form that can be signed off, and even things down to the terms and conditions. The terms and conditions have been updated with the actual information of the client in. So that's what it does. And on here, it's got a question: do you want to send this quote? It's also created a sign now link. So if you click on the sign now link, it's then linked to sign now automatically and has the option to sign off the quote there. So it does all of that automatically, and then all I need to do to send that to the customer is go yes. It says thanks, that's been done. And then I've even, just for demonstration purposes, I've even got Teams to tell me that a quote's been sent to a customer. And on sales opportunities now, it's marked it as client quoted yes, it's updated that information. I've got an attachment, so if I click into there, I can then see all the information, but I can also see the quote that was sent to them as well. And then the customer gets an email pinged to them saying, thanks for your inquiry. That's the text that I put into the form. Please find a quote attached to agree to this. Please sign. Please click the sign now. So all of that is done via forms and flow.
Brilliant. So there's just one question. How did you get the fee into the quote?
So I got the fee into the quote using some. So this is my flow app. Using
Right.
some clever formulas. So I'll show you that. This flow is pretty advanced, by the way. It's not exactly the most simple, but just to show you how powerful you can make it. So proposal flow. Oh, it also, once it's been signed, by the way, it updates all the records, tells us the contract's been signed and all that sort of stuff as well. So inside the flow, I have a lot of variables where it's like it takes all the information from the forms. So it pulls information from the form, creates a load of variables, creates a quote date, which is based on today. And then it goes through and we have some conditions. So depending on whether they choose, or whether we accept the quote or we accept to pass it through, it then goes through and sends an email, up here. Type of proposal. So is it an IT support one or an extended department? Because we've got different formulas for those, but it then goes through and uses variables to link and formulas to link it all together. So it's pretty advanced, but it then fills out the Word template automatically with all the information that's been input and all the calculations it's done, and then it creates a file, PDFs it, and sends it on to the customer.
Fantastic. And you've set that flow up basically, and then once it's set up, away you go. So that leads me on to just in the question around integrating it with Go Proposal. I don't see why it can't be integrated with Go Proposal because of the open API and whatnot that GP's got, but perhaps we can have a conversation about that in the forum. I've just got a question from Jerry and then a follow-on question from Jerry. Is there a way to create a form in Teams, email it to the customer, and then it comes back to you via Teams once they've submitted it? Well, I think you showed that.
Yeah, that's possible. Yeah, so you can drop that file wherever you want, or you could just have the information. You can have the information wherever you want, input to whatever piece of information you want. So yeah, that's easily possible.
Away you go. And then the last question, which is a tee up for you, Joe. Does Joe offer consultancy for teams? We have our own IT company, but it would be great to have some one-to-one help on the specific work that we want to do. Do you do that sort of stuff? So just share the way that you work, Joe, and how we might, as a group or as individuals within the group, take it forward. That'd be great.
Yeah. So yes, I do consultancy on Teams, and like I say, a lot of this was a lot of the things that you do in Teams is to get, completely missed a bit as well, but is to utilize Teams bringing everything together. But there's lots of little separate bits that I get involved in. So Flow, as you can tell, I'm pretty advanced on Flow. And Forms is dead easy. Forms is really easy to use and it's really powerful rather than sending PDFs out and things like that. And it's a great way of capturing information or surveys and things. But if you use Forms and Flow together, it can become extremely powerful. And you don't need to be using Teams to be using forms. So you can do forms separately outside of that. But again, the one biggest problem I think I've seen with a lot of businesses when they try and use Office 365 is they try and use SharePoint for files, but there's confusion within the workforce because they don't know how to get to the files or what to do with them, and they can't find them easily, and they're used to just having everything on their computer. Using Teams brings things like files and forms and SharePoint lists all into one place, so you don't have that struggle and disconnect anymore with people not knowing how to find stuff or whereabouts it is. But yeah, I can help businesses to adopt Teams into their business and to get buy-in, because the biggest thing, we start with something like this where people have to want to use it, because if they don't want to use it, they're going to just try and detract away from it or complain about it. So you have to start by educating people as to why they should use it and why it's useful to have, and then we start getting them on our side, and then we start to bit by bit incorporate some of the core features that the Teams has got, until eventually everyone just wants to do everything in it. So that's one thing though. You might something else, but one thing is so searching for files and conversations. So if I type in IR35 in the chat box at the top in the search box, it's come up with a chat. But if I click on files, see this OPR fact sheet. Now that find that instantly because it's got the phrase IR35 inside there. But one of the things, so let's see, for example, Exchequer, right? So we can take a piece of text. Oh, that doesn't work. We can take a piece of text like X. This is where I can't spell it. And in the search bar, you can also use stars asterisk as a wildcard. So if I do that and look for files, it also finds that file. So this is a really easy way of, once you've got files in here, start using the search bar to find information from within the files that you're looking for. It's so instant that it saves people, it could save people 20 minutes a day just by finding files quickly and easily. So yeah.
Brilliant. So if anybody wants to get in touch with you, Joe, what's the best way of doing that? Can you share the details with me as well? And I'll put them in the Facebook group. So
yeah, that's fine. Easiest way to get in touch with me for consultancy is simply, email address is joe@5bi.uk. And if you can obviously distribute that, my contact details as well. So yeah.
5B for Bravo, I for Indigo.
India. Yeah. .uk, joe@5bi.uk. That's my email address. If anyone wants to talk to me more about about what we can do with their Office 365, and as I say, Teams is one part of it. There's loads of add-ons and things that people could be utilising much better.
Brilliant, excellent. I'll make sure that goes in the Facebook group. It won't, because I've literally got to go straight out of here into another meeting, but it'll be on there. It'll be on there this morning. I've still got questions coming in, Joe, but I just find it remarkable. We've still got best part of 50 people on the webinar, even though we've gone.
Well, let me just
good 20 minutes over time.
Okay. Well,
so I think it's been absolutely fantastic, Joe, and I would be delighted if there was some way that I could bribe or cajole you into coming back and having another conversation.
Yeah, obviously, if we can get feedback of what people would like to drill into more specifically, I think forms and flows sounds like something that a lot of people have got questions on. Yeah. Happy to do a session on that. But yeah, if you can let me know what they'd like me to drill into, and we can do that.
Brilliant. And Chris Gunn sums it up with bravo. I think is a good thing. So if you just stop sharing your screen, Joe, that'd be great.
Yeah.
And then I'll say thank you very much, and thank you for everybody that's. Matthew said, "Thanks, Joe and Simon. Great session. Would definitely like another set." They're all flowing in. Thank you, Joe and Simon. So we'll definitely get something. We'll definitely get something set up. That's brilliant. Thank you very much, Joe, and I'll put your contact details in the Facebook group, and we'll catch up soon.
Fantastic. Thank you. See you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.